This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 13th of August 2019, and I am 2J.
I am Tuam.
And I am Mzigo, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines. Daily Nation, counties grind to halt, staff go without July pay. The Standard, drugs, fake money and wanted tycoon. And The Star, anxiety over 26 MPs' jobs as census looms. Let's start with these counties. Grind to a halt.
So apparently, the counties have not received money from the Exchequer to pay July salaries.
But whose fault is it?
I don't know.
It's Treasury.
Is it because Rachichi's missing? I don't know.
What's interesting is that 23 counties have been able to pay, but it's only a remaining 20 who have been able to meet that requirement.
Some of those who have been able to pay is not because money has been remitted; it's because they're using some of their savings. And
so
internal
they
revenues.
Have good money practices in the counties. Something that should be lauded, I think.
Who would have thought?
But what do we say about this headline? We have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Is this headline topical or is it speculative? Is it repetitive or is it groundbreaking? And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Look, before we say any of that, I want to say this.
Say that.
That I think someone in government is playing a dangerous game. And if you want PUNGUZA Mzigo to succeed, continue mistreating counties, because you cannot expect about 23, half of all the counties.
And the threshold required for a referendum to continue on into the National Assembly
is just 24?
24.
24, all right? If you want PUNGUZA Mzigo to succeed and your BBI to fail.
This is exactly what you should do.
Continue mistreating this.
So maybe we ask Ms. K's question again. Whose fault is this?
It is government. It is government. And government has a head.
That we shall not mention.
Hey, as we delve into...
I think it is a good story. It lifts the veil of ignorance, but I think let's look at what we have.
So put in the parking bay.
Yes.
Okay, anxiety over 26 MP jobs as census looms. I feel like this is a very preemptive story, which I don't mind, by the way. Sometimes it's good for us to be anticipatory of the issues that we're going to get. And there are a couple of things that we're going to have in this country. We definitely have to have a census every 10 years. And this is what this is talking about. But after the census, we need to have our boundaries reviewed. But first, you get the census. The census gives you what they call a population quota. Then based on the population quota, they delimit the boundaries. Now, these 26 MPs were very lucky. In 2010, the Legal Commission called their constituencies protected.
And why was that?
Because they were not going to meet the threshold. They were all below the threshold.
So the threshold is 133,000 population.
As per the current population. But when we do a census, we will calculate a new quota. And once we have that new quota, then we determine which constituencies we have based on that new quota. So these guys are anticipating that if we've never met it before, we might not meet it. Therefore, we don't want our jobs to go. I mean, no one takes power to see it.
So what you're saying is it is very likely that 26 constituencies will not exist.
First, let's count the people, then we'll know whether they'll exist or not.
And I think that's why we're calling it a preemptive story. It's a bit speculative, but I do think it is still important for us to understand the consequences or what we are going to anticipate in the run-up to the census and thereafter.
Also, it just helps us understand why census is important. Census is important for 2022. And is it only important because of our constituencies? Or will we have a new tyranny of numbers?
I mean, there's some communities that we are anticipating are going to shock us with their numbers.
So, dear Gemma, as you have a 2.0 household, there are some people who are still on 15 per household. So that will have an effect.
That's true.
I'm serious.
Shall we toss this though?
I say toss this. Because we'll still discuss that. It'll come back. It'll also come back. I'm not yet done the census. We'll keep discussing it. Finally, The Standard. Drugs, fake money and wanted tycoon.
This headline is so gripping. And you know what?
This is the second thriller movie style story we've had.
About a tycoon.
About a tycoon who... Anyway.
This one is wanted. The other one was missing. I don't know if they found him.
Okay, let's not call him that because the court has not said he is. So it's
his wife said she went and reported. Plus his sister.
Anyway, what is the story about, guys?
this new story?
So it's a story. The man called Ali Punjani, who showed up in India to undergo, I think, heart surgery.
Yeah.
The cops raided his house yesterday.
That was unfair. You wait for me
weekend.
to go to be treated, then you raid my house.
No, what actually happened is there was a security meeting, I think, on Saturday, and Matiang'i led all county security of the coastal area, right? And it's because there's a drug problem in that place. And there he said, this process will be painful because you'll be arresting people. So they went, and I think they arrested an OCS.
Yeah.
They arrested an MCA, and I think they went to Ali Punjani's house to look for him, and they didn't find him.
I think this story is very interesting because it does preempt what our final thought we'll discuss today.
Absolutely.
How when you have circumstances where the state is present in an area, how drug trade or violence can either thrive or can die.
Absolutely.
So maybe Matiang'i is doing a good thing in really being aggressive and stepping on their heads trying to stop this.
For the first time he's doing his job, going after betting companies is nonsense.
So does that make this our winning headline?
Yes, I would buy this.
I think so.
Just look at that image. This is Kenyan
Escobar.
Well, we have a winning headline from the Standard. On to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Just like the headlines, we have a three-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves, is the cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy?
Absolutely.
Gado is still on holiday.
I agree.
I think we should send out some kind of missing post for him.
Mero,
where he is.
please find Gado's inspiration and bring it back.
But let's describe this first. It's a caricature of Vladimir Putin, president of Russia.
Strange face.
Yes, and he doesn't have clothes, but he's wearing trousers, and he has a holster with spaces for bullets. And on the holster is
for the gun
is a Donald. Yes, is a Donald. And I don't know, what's going to try and tell us here?
The context is there was a missile accident that happened in Russia, and Trump tweeted in reference to it saying that the US has now learned from the mistakes of Russia.
Yes.
But at the same time, he might have inadvertently exposed the fact that the US does have a missile program
of its own,
which they should not.
Yeah.
I think that just on the basis that this is another international cartoon that does not directly impact us as Kenyans or Africans,
and that you need a lot of context to understand.
I think we toss.
Daily Nation.
Fantastic.
Kuja tu.
Fantastic. And I'm of the view.
Before you even describe it, it should be the winning headline. I have read your mind.
Let me describe it. All right. Caricature of ODM leader, but this time wearing a red tie, Raila Odinga. And he's saying Kuja tu, because he's saying Kuja tu because Uhuru Kenyatta is reversing a hearse. And the name of that hearse is Handshake Funeral Services. And inside the hearse is a casket of Jubilee. And on top of the casket, it's a nice wreath
yellow flowers. Yellow. But who's driving that car?
Is none other than the son of Jomo. And he's saying, okay, he's been told Kuja. But right next, just behind the hearse,
as a reverse,
is a grave.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether Uhuru will stop at the grave and let the casket out and bury Jubilee.
Oh, no, I think Dula is telling us they're all going in there together.
Or the hearse and the driver.
I say option 2 because the Kuja 2 is very loud. You know, it's not the one for a little bit.
He's telling him, go!
Kuja 2, just keep coming. Bury yourself, hearse and all.
This handshake is destroying.
Killing political parties left, right, and center.
I think what the funny thing is that the narrative before has been that it is both Raila and Uhuru in this handshake car together.
Yes.
But now Dula is telling us that Raila seems to have exited the car and Uhuru is going to go down. He's going to sink by himself.
You see, when a lorry is being driven, see, there's a driver and a turn boy. So this is the turn boy. The turn boy would have been Ruto, but it's Raila now.
I will not speak, but the flowers,
cartoon.
I said put it in the parking bay, but I really like it. Let's see what Ozone has for us today.
Oh, first, he's gotten the picture of Matiang'i wrong, because this is a skinny guy.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
No comment. Describe the rest of the cartoon, please.
All right, caricature of CS Roti. Oh, my God.
Wow.
Freudian slip. That tells us where your mind is at. CS
Matiang'i. And he's sweeping the streets of Mombasa. And next to them is razor blades, syringes. I think it's depicting the
drug.
The state of drugs, yeah.
But to him is the backdrop is Mombasa Raha. You can see people are enjoying next to the beach. And the caption there is time to make some sweeping changes.
Yeah.
It's like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back.
What do you mean, and you're looking at me?
I
Okay.
know what to say.
You know what I'm going to say.
Forward.
I think that this was a decent cartoon up until the point when he wrote the caption. On my notes here, I've cancelled out the caption because I didn't want to see it. I think we understand it. The cartoon is very clear. He is sweeping away the things that are bothering Mombasa. So I think that because of that caption, we toss.
I say we toss it. If I was to look at Ndula versus Ozone, today I'd say Ndula is the winning cartoon.
Oh yes, definitely. It's a fantastic cartoon.
Yeah,
and we have a winning cartoon from the of the nation. What is our final thought? And I will preempt by saying that our standard headline is preemptive of what we're looking at this week.
It led us to this, all right? And now our final thought, inspired by a book entitled Killing Pablo, The Hunt for the World's Greatest Outlaw by Mark Bowden. Julie, will give a summary.
Yeah, as you said, Killing Pablo, The Hunt for the World's Greatest Outlaw. Mark Bowden, he also wrote one of those books about...
No, it's about this guy in Somalia.
Black Hawk Down, there we go.
Yeah.
So I think that as part of the criticism we might discuss as we talk about this book is that this guy really primes his books for movies and TV shows. Yes. So maybe he tends to over-exaggerate or over-dramatize some of the issues
he has an audience and you can't fault him. If a guy is good at writing for a script, let him write for the script.
Do it.
Absolutely.
So as you can guess from the title, we're going to be discussing Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
So before we get into the story, I just want to throw out some facts about his wealth or purported wealth by the time he died.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
By 1992, Pablo Escobar was responsible for 80% of the global cocaine market.
Wow.
He brought in an estimated $420 million every week in revenue.
420 million.
How much is that?
That is 40 billion.
Oh, 40 billion shillings.
40 billion shillings.
I think that's what the counties are missing right now. His wealth became so problematic for him that he couldn't launder it fast enough.
Yeah.
So he was stashing it in ceilings, he was digging it and hiding it in farms, he was putting it into walls.
They're also using it as firewood to warm their
houses. There's a story about how he used $2 million as firewood because his daughter was cold.
Absolutely.
He was earning so much that he would write off 10% of his money because rats would eat it or it would get damaged by water. By the time he died in 1993, his net worth was about $30 billion, and he was on the list for Forbes' richest for 7 years straight from 1987 to the time he died in 93.
Yeah.
The most interesting fact I find that is always told is how he was spending $2,500 every week on rubber bands. Just to hold money together. That's what, 250,000 shillings just to hold your billions of shillings together. If only I could be that rich. If only. So, this book details the efforts of the US and Colombian governments and their respective military and intelligence units as they tried to stop the activities of Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel, which is what he led.
Absolutely.
So the book looks at the life of Pablo Escobar, but also at the political climate in Colombia at the time and how it allowed Escobar to become a criminal to the heights that he did. He was terrorizing not only South America, but he was terrorizing the world.
Absolutely.
So I see this book or his story in two timelines. Pre-1970 and post-1970. And I think it all starts with the assassination of a presidential candidate in 1948. And he was adored and loved by the people. So after this person was killed, it started a decade of violence. Or as some would say, almost 3 decades of violence, which was called La Violencia.
La Violencia.
So what you have pre-1970, Colombia is very unstable. And Escobar grew up in this period, La Violencia, and he became accustomed to understanding how violence could get you the things that you wanted. And so that kind of formed his thought process on money, on wealth, on opportunities. So he started small. He would rob cars. He sold marijuana.
Tombstones.
Oh, yes, he actually started with tombstones.
He would blow them up and then reconstruct them again and then sell them.
Oh my gosh.
He was a genius. You have to give him that. So he started out small, but then he became this huge drug kingpin selling cocaine. So he encouraged swift and deadly violence. In the book, Bowen says, Pablo lived in a world where accumulation of wealth required the capacity to defend it. So you have this policy that Escobar is very well known for. In Spanish, it is plata o plomo, which means silver or lead. So essentially, you either take the bribe I'm giving you, or know that I'm going to come and kill you.
Yes.
And those are the options that he gave people, and he was very strict about that.
Absolutely.
But at the same time as he's having all this violence, he develops this social conscience.
Absolutely.
And he becomes very enamored in taking care of his people. He became very devoted to the community, protecting the poor, ensuring that children did not starve.
Yes.
And this made him very popular, but then in turn it made him very powerful.
Absolutely.
So now we move into the post-1970.
Yes.
Reagan becomes...
But before you go there, I want to pause you for a moment there and talk about that love. That love for this Robin Hood type of person who grew up in a situation of violence, meted it out in equal measure, but to some regard was still love.
Absolutely.
And I have to say that there has to be a reason why that happens. And I'm going to be preempting the things that we're going to discuss this week and say it has to be a situation in which you had the president die and you had the state kind of going to anarchy. And he had to create some sort of order in the area where he lived. And because he created order and protected his community from the absence of the state where he was, that's why he was able to get love.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's so true. He was able to give the people something that they did not have.
And I'm hoping in your next segment you'll tell us why it changed.
Yes, so you have now, because of the love of the people, he gets voted into Congress. The people say, we want you to represent us. But he goes to Congress and he is not admitted into this club because it is essentially what we have in Kenya, what we like to talk about, dynasties versus hustlers.
So he was a member of the Hustler
He
Nation.
was a member of the Hustler. He was probably one of the original hustlers of Colombia.
Absolutely. You know what? I remember, I don't know whether you watched this scene from Narcos.
Narcos, which is on Netflix,
it's on Netflix. And he walks into Congress and he doesn't have a tie. He just has a shirt and he walks in majestic and he's so happy that now he's a member of
this elite club.
But then, you know, he's actually kicked out because he didn't have a tie on. And you see what the tie represented is it represented a divide, right? Between the rulers and those that are ruled. Anyway, continue.
So what's really interesting is because he's not admitted into Congress, he then tells the elites. He says, as you like to say, you don't want me in here.
Wait.
Let me show you what I will do to you out there. You think you have power here? Let me show you the power I have on the streets.
Right.
And he starts this decade-long terror.
Absolutely.
In the book, he talks about how he held 30 million people, the population of Colombia, under hostage. The whole country stopped because of one man and the vendetta that he had against the elites who refused to accept him.
And I have to agree that he did have that sort of power because they say that up until I think the height of his power was like 1989, just before he was captured. And he had it is said that he orchestrated the killing of 3 presidential candidates.
And three of the 5.
Yes, 3 of the 5 presidential candidates were offed by Pablo Escobar, and whoever did eventually become president. In the end, Pablo is the one who gave himself to him, and it was a deal where he had a soft landing. So they really did not exercise any power. Pablo showed them, truly, I control the government from out here.
At this point, now you have the United States who come in. So what I was talking about was Ronald Reagan becomes president, and his wife has this say no to drugs policy. So they start exporting crack cocaine to the US, and it's very cheap, and it starts disturbing the population of the US, and it becomes a war on drugs.
Absolutely.
This is now where the turning point happens. The US becomes involved. And they were spending how much?
It was $700 million. There was an aid program called Drug Aid of about $1.3 billion. But before I criticize it, continue.
One thing I wanted to also note is that Pablo Escobar's biggest fight with the state was at the fact that the Colombian government decided to cow out and become a sissy, if I could call them that. Instead of dealing with their drug problem, knowing that they're the source of the drugs, what they did was that they came into an agreement with the states to extradite cocaine exporters. Now, Pablo, being the apex exporter, knew that there's no way I can control my outcomes if I'm extradited to the US. Therefore, now he started meeting violence on the government.
But at the same time, I also don't blame Gaviria. Gaviria was the president of Colombia then.
At that time,
And his political promises, I will get you Escobar, right? But because he couldn't get...
that his compatriots had been killed.
Absolutely.
That was a very brave thing to
say. But because he couldn't contain him, what other choice did he have? He used to call the Americans.
Yeah, that's very true. So we see that by 1993, Pablo Escobar is killed with an effort combined between the US and Colombia. And this eventually ends the reign of terror of Pablo Escobar,
yes,
but not of the other cartels who then continued to, you know, have their reign of terror over Colombia. And I still think to this day, 26 years later, they're still dealing with the effects of what this has done.
Yes.
And I'll put it in this way. I don't think I want to be preemptive, but I will say this.
Yeah.
When you have a gang, and that gang is protective of the community, the community will like the gang.
Yes.
That was how Pablo Escobar began.
Absolutely.
But at some point, that gang always changes and becomes bad to the community, which is what Pablo became.
Yes.
And when you become mean to the community that loved you and incorporated you, then a new one will rise up.
Yes.
So the people who you are, who you smart or who you hurt, will then form a gang against you.
Yes.
And that's
so
actually
exactly what happened in this situation. For them to get to Pablo Escobar in the end, another gang had to come up.
The gang was
and
called the Los Pepes.
Los Pepes.
And it was the people who were persecuted by Pablo Escobar. I think that was the name.
The people who he had wronged ended up turning on him. They were killing his family members, killing his associates. It was very interesting how that happened.
Absolutely.
And they were working with the state.
Yes.
And that's how they were able to like eliminate all of the barriers to Pablo Escobar and find him alone and stranded. And then they executed.
Absolutely. But guys, I also want to pick a bone with this book, and I think it's being apologist to the Americans and their way of doing things. And there's a reason why he also wrote Black Hawk Down. Look, every single campaign the Americans have, right, the war against terror in Iraq, in Afghanistan, it's all propagated because of business interest. Now, the war on drugs in the 80s and the 90s, it was propagated because of financial interest. Let me ask you guys, who's the biggest consumer of cocaine in the world?
America.
It's America. 37% of the world's cocaine is consumed by Americans. Killing Pablo was not going to stop the trade, and I am very sure the Americans knew that. That was not the intention, but it was a decoy. Because if at all you're going to help the Colombians with advanced technology, with planes that can be able to listen into phone calls and those planes and that technology is going to be sold to U.S. contractors.
Yeah, it's not free.
At the end of the day, it's a money game. All right? But writing this book is meant to make Americans look very nice. Oh, we stopped.
They saved Colombia.
Actually, it's a glorification when you read it. Absolutely. I think one of the critiques that has been given on this book is the fact that it's a book for a business class traveler who is tired and exhausted and just wants something to read on a long haul flight. That better books have been written because this one glorifies the role that America played in it and exactly how they were helped.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think you should not be cheated easily.
This is Winning Headlines. Today we had a winning headline from The Standard. Fake drugs, fake money, and money tycoon.
Yes.
Preemptive of what we're doing this week.
Absolutely.
And we had a winning cartoon from the Daily Newspaper. Which can give us an interesting depiction of how Jubilee will come to a quick end. This week we're doing gangs, gangsters, and the mafia. Stay with us. It will be very interesting.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and take a moment to look for us on your TV screen. We are on Star Times, GoTV, and Pang free to air. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.